Hey everybody, Jane here. I had heard so many people talking about this book, Role Playing by Cathy Yardley, that I wanted to read it and see what I thought of it.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken.
For those who don't know, this is a romance and it features older characters. So the lady in the romance, her name is Maggie, and she is 48, and the guy, Aiden, is 50. And I don't know that I've ever read a mature romance before. It was very interesting just having characters who are a little older. Most romances, we have people in their 20s, maybe early 30s, but to have characters who are in the 50s, it's a lot closer to my own age than the 20-something romances. So I did really love that. So these characters, Maggie and Aiden, they are both playing a video game together. It's a multiplayer online game. Maggie's son has convinced her to try to be more social, and in all of this, one of her friends has told her that she has a friend who runs an online gaming guild, and she passes on her information and is accepted into this gaming guild by Aiden. Based on different information that they both got about the other, Maggie assumes that Aiden is in his 20s, about the same age as her son. She is a single mother. Aiden assumes that Maggie is much older, like in her 70s, like kind of closer to his own mother's age. So, as they're interacting and things online, they become really good friends. But again, they both think that there's a huge age difference, so there's no real romantic feelings. Maggie has maybe a little bit of crushing, but she always just is like, oh, this kid, he's old enough to be your child. So even though he's super nice and you're really good friends, you're just friends, don't make it weird, which is fair. Um, I know that there are some, what do they call it, May December romances that exist and work, and for those people that's wonderful. I personally think it would be very difficult to date somebody significantly younger. Like, if you were if you were 50 and they were 20, that might be a little tricky. So anyway, circumstances happen and they end up meeting in person and both being quite surprised to decide to figure out that the other person is not at all what they think. So then this they form a very deep friendship, and eventually, eventually, eventually it becomes more than that. So I ended up rating this book 4 stars. There is so much that is wonderful about this book. Some of it's spoilery that we're going to have to chat about, but I really loved so much about this book. However, it was so slow. And like there's good reason, we learn why it had to be slow, but man, I didn't think I was going to get through this book at first. Like I was reading it and being like, can we get on with it? I just don't care. And then when I finally did get further in it and did start caring, it was wonderful. So, I think the first criticism I have of this book is that it's super long. The first thing I have that is wonderful to say about it is the characters are deep and complex and interesting. So we have Maggie, who is raising a teenage son who has just gone off to university, and she's kind of an empty nester. She is also divorced for several years now and has a lot of pain that she's still working through from her marriage. Particularly, her husband was very negative about their child and the way that she chose to parent their child. And they had a lot of fights about that. And then once the divorce happened, her husband really wasn't in her son's life. And so she has just been really focused on taking care of her son. And now that her son is off in college, she just has a lot to process. So I loved her kind of story of who she was and the complexity of her character, while also, she plays video games, she likes black and white movies. She is a character. She's very kind of antisocial. She doesn't, in the setting of the story, which is very much a small town, which I think makes a huge difference. Um, she's having trouble finding people that she would like to hang out with. The people that she is kind of friendly with are mostly like her son's friends' parents or mother. That's like the person who got connected her with Aiden to start gaming. That was one of the people that it was her son's friend's mom. So she just doesn't have a lot of her own friends. And also, I will say, like, as a mom, when my girls were little, that was very true as well. Like, the only people I spend time with were pretty much other moms who had kids my age because that's just your whole life. Now, as I've gotten older, I've tried to make room for my own life as well. My kids are teenagers now, so that's a little easier. And also I have a partner, so it's not like if I want to go enjoy time with my friends, my kids are left by themselves. That's not the case here. But I could see where she was just very focused on her son, and she's got to deal with that. Aiden also has a lot of complex family things going on. He had moved back. Oh, he's a nurse, and he had been running a hospice with his friend. Then his father became terminally ill with cancer, and he came back to his hometown to try and help, you know, deal with his dad's end of life. And he did do that. And then since then, he's been dealing with his mother, who has a lot of medical issues, and is just getting older. She's having fainting spells, she's falling, and she he's concerned about her ability to take care of herself in a meaningful way. So he does a lot of stuff for this elderly mother. Now, unfortunately, him and his elderly mother do not have a close relationship for reasons that we are a little spoilery and that we learn later on. I so very much related to Aiden and some of the things he was going through. So I am and I should probably tell you about his brother before I get onto my why I relate. So Aiden does have a brother, but his brother lives further away. His brother is kind of in denial about their mom's situation, and his brother is also very clearly the favorite child. And so there is a lot of tension between him and his mother, and a little bit with the brother of him trying to bring his brother in and be like, we need to deal with the mom. We need to make things, you know, get things in order for her, because very soon she's going to need, like, probably a nursing home or much more intensive care than she is getting at home by herself. So, and his brother, though, him and his brother have kind of a strange relationship. So Aiden's brother is married to Aiden's ex-girlfriend. And it's been a long time since he's dated her. I want to say like 10 years. But that was also his last relationship. And we again, in kind of a little bit more spoilery stuff, we can talk about why. So they have kind of an odd relationship. His sister-in-law, who is his ex, does not like him, does not want him around their home, around her husband, and just kind of makes things not great for him. She obviously still has a lot of pent up anger and frustrations about what happened that broke them up. So, the way I could say it was relatable to me is my siblings all have moved away, and I am the only one still living in the same town that my parents live in. And that has definitely made for interesting things like, if my parents need something, I am the immediate child. Now, at this time, my parents are both living, though they are both struggling with their health, and it's definitely hard to be that child who is trying to help your parents. And we're just doing this at a very minor level, but I definitely related to Aiden and the frustration of like having to take that on. Additionally, my parents and I are not super close. We don't have quite as many issues as Aiden and his mother, but we definitely have some issues. So, like, having that, being a good child while also recognizing that, like, you are the child who maybe is least, is the least person who should be doing this because you have maybe the least good relationship with the parents. I think I really related to that. So I feel like, especially for people who are my age, 40, um, you'll find a lot of these characters really relatable. Some of the criticisms I have that are not spoilery. Firstly, all of the side characters are mostly kind of awful. And some of them are over the top, and they don't feel like it is necessarily like they are genuinely awful because they should be. There is a little bit of stereotyping, especially about, small towns, and almost everybody we come in contact with who surrounds Maggie and Aiden, they're kind of awful. And I found that a little bit frustrating at times. That, and part of it does seem to be that Maggie and Aiden both, they this doesn't feel necessarily like their home. They both have a little bit of like, I came back here for reasons, but this isn't where I would be if I could be somewhere. So I think that they have a little bit of struggle being in this little town and having people surrounding them who are very different from who they are as people. But Deb in particular, who is kind of the mutual friend between these two, she is just not a very polite person. She is very invasive, she's very presumptuous, and she's kind of over the top about things. She has a sister who lives with her who is equally awful. Then we have Aiden's really good friend. I don't remember, I think his name might be Riley, who they played sports together in high school. And this guy is just kind of a gross, he's gross when it comes to women. He's kind of like trying to get with all the girls, but not in a dating kind of way. So we just have a lot of really awful side characters. Aiden's mom is not a good person. Aiden's ex is not a good person. Aiden's brother is a complicated person. So, the only side character that you could kind of argue is a good person who we don't get a lot of time with is Maggie's son. He's off to college, and even he does some questionable things that don't necessarily feel like they had to be there. They had to be there for drama. They didn't have to be there because it made a lot of sense in the story. So I do want to get into some spoiler territory, but before I do, one of the things that I have to say about this book is there's a certain element of it that we're going to get into in the spoilers that I feel like the book should have been more upfront with it being an element of the story, because I think this book would have, there are just certain things that sometimes certain people gravitate towards or certain people don't want to read. And one of those elements is in this book. And I did find out about it very shortly before going in. And it wasn't something that would have altered my personal reading experience, but because it is such a big part of the stuff that happens in the later part of the book, I just feel like there should have maybe been some kind of hint or something, and maybe there was, but I was too dense to find it on the back in the synopsis or an author's note or something saying, hey, this is something that is in this book. It's going to be something that's kind of a big deal in this book. And because of that, you know, we want to let you know so that the right people pick this up. Because what I think is probably happening to a degree is maybe some people who are looking for this thing don't know it's in this book because it's not obvious. And then people who aren't looking for this thing might pick it up and be like, you know, we're reading, we're having a good time. And then when they find out this thing, they're like, oh, you know, I'm not necessarily comfortable with that experience. Because, you know, people are people. So, that is one thing. As we go into the spoiler section, I'm going to spoil what that is, but I really wish, and it didn't affect my rating, but I really wish that this book had been very clear that this was happening so that the right readers could pick this up. All right, we are going into spoiler territory now in 3, 2, 1. So, one of the big elements that is important in this book is that Aiden is demisexual. He does not know that that is a thing, but he is at one point explaining to Maggie how he doesn't often feel attracted to people. And as a matter of fact, he's only really had a couple relationships before. There was the ex who's married to his brother, and then he dated a guy in college, his college roommate, who he was really good friends with. And at first, she assumes he's ace. And so they have a little bit of a discussion of, well, maybe you're ace. He's like, well, it's not that I don't ever feel attraction. And, you know, when I'm in a relationship and feeling attraction, you know, I'm good to go. So he's like, it doesn't seem like ace. And she's like, well, maybe you're demi. And he learns more about that identity and is like, yes, I am demi. So we learn later that a big part of the reason that him and his mom are having so many issues is because she is aware that he had a boyfriend, and so she believes he is gay, and she thinks that in this small town that reflects badly on her. Similarly, we learn that part of the reason that his brother's wife and him broke up was because she found out that he had had a boyfriend in college, and she felt that that meant that it wasn't something she could get past in their relationship. And again, this was fine by me. I love reading LGBTQIA characters. However, I will tell you, I have some friends who are fairly conservative, and they are not fans of having LGBTQ characters put in a book without knowing that going in. Sometimes that's something that's kind of an ick for them. And, you know, it's people should be able to read what they want to read. And so I really wish there had been an indication somewhere that he was demi, because I love that. Like, that would have made me pick up this book. I'd have been super excited about it. And I get that it's a reveal later, but it's just kind of, you know, this is a straight passing couple. And to have a character who is LGBTQIA, I just feel like readers, it made it difficult for the right readers in some cases maybe to pick this up. So I loved the exploration of Aiden being demi. I didn't necessarily like the treatment he gets from his family. As a matter of fact, his sister-in-law is really awful. He brings Maggie to a wedding. So I should probably back up and explain about that. So as their friendship blooms. At one point, he has to go to the same wedding as his brother. So he invites Maggie along as they're not dating at this time. They don't even know they have feelings yet. But, well, I think they're starting to realize they have feelings. But anyway, he brings Maggie along to this wedding, and his sister-in-law outs him during the reception. So they're at the dinner table, and the sister-in-law turns to Maggie and is like, "Has he told you that he's gay?" And Maggie, and this is actually the best scene from the book, because Maggie is like a 5 foot little thing who is incredibly protective of Aiden, who is like a big, tall, burly man. She like is ready to fight this lady. She's going to go down with this girl. And like Aiden has to hold her back. Like she's taking out her earrings and is jumping across the table, and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't gotta fight her. It's fine." I also didn't think that the resolution with him and his family, it wasn't very, I think he grew as a person, and maybe we couldn't have a better resolution, but it was just kind of weird. Because so this, him being Demi and everything that happens at the dinner kind of makes it so he and his family cut ties. And then at the very end, we have his ex-girlfriend, who is his brother's wife, calling and being like, "Your brother left me because I'm mean to you, so would you please call him and tell him I called to apologize?" It was just a real weird scene. I didn't like that. But anyway, all of this happens like at the very close to the very end of the book. And then we have, at this wedding, Aiden realizes that he has feelings, and she's had feelings for a while, but with him being Demi, it's a little bit touchy and she doesn't want to bring it up. And then when they do bring it up, it's kind of like, okay, well, I've never dated somebody who's Demi, so what's okay, what's not, especially once they get into a bedroom situation. Like, there is two spicy scenes in this book. And again, everything is like so far to the end. Like, it took so long to get there. So long. So long. Like, we saw this building friendship, and it was lovely, but it took a really long time to get to the lovers part. So anyway, I do think that that the resolution and the stuff with his family, while it played such a big, important plot in his story, and I think that's the other reason that I don't think it was because it was such a big part of the story. I think it was important to let people know that that was a part of this book, because you know it ended up, it wasn't just, "Oh, hey, I'm Demi," which, I mean, is still in a romance where people are reading this for their fantasies, for their preferences. That's still worth noting. But especially when it becomes such a huge part of the story later, it would have been nice to know, so that the right people like me could have grabbed this, and I loved it. And I did, like I said, find out from a YouTuber that he was Demi before I picked it up, and it was one of the reasons that I'd been like, "Oh, I'll probably pick it up," and then I went like, "Yes, I'm definitely picking it up because I'm curious to see how they handle this." But yeah, his issues with his family aren't real well resolved by the end, and I think that's another thing that just everything with his family somewhat brought down my rating. Like, I liked how he grew as a person, but it was just a kind of weird thing. So I liked the characters, I liked their growth, I liked him being Demi, I liked the plot ish. I just, there were some things that just, I didn't like all the side characters. I didn't necessarily like the small town mentality. I didn't love that the big thing that we're focusing on that's causing all the issues is you know, being demisexual. It was interesting and a good book. I enjoyed it. I don't think everybody would enjoy it. And I I think I think this book is good if you're really open to slow burn, but it was so slow. Like, so slow. And again, he's Demi, so that makes so much sense. But I was so frustrated at the beginning of this book. And I was even frustrated because, like, I think it's probably like 50 pages that they start, you know, getting together, like getting together. It's like very close to the end. Um, it's probably more than 50 pages, maybe like 75. But like it's near the end when they start being like, "Oh, there's feelings happening." And I would have liked to see a little bit more of them in their glory of relationship building instead of, I do like though that since we're doing a friends to lovers, it is not a, oh, I've always been attracted to you, had a secret crush on you, I just didn't tell you, which is how friends to lovers usually goes. It is, with him being Demi, they build that friendship and then he's like, "Oh, she's kind of hot. I kind of like her," which is perfect. But yeah, I think you really have to be okay with slow and to enjoy this. Also, there was not nearly as much of the role playing element as I would have enjoyed in this story. There's some, it's there, but it played a smaller role than in some of the other gaming books I've read recently. So, have you read role playing? Did you like it? What were your thoughts? Please leave it below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.